Hi folks, this is Jeffery Donaldson again with another Jeweler's Eye reading of a poem from a new volume of Canadian poetry. I've been looking forward to the prospect of sitting down with one of the many fine poems in the work of A.F. Moritz, and have found a happy occasion in The Book to Come, which is the first poem in his latest collection entitled The New Measures. The Book to Come. Each page in this book is first. Each re-begins everything the others had decided once and for all. Behold, I make all things new. And happy forgets the others ever were. It sets out at naked dawn in culpable but perfect innocence, joys in the terror of stumbling on alone, grows sick of the perpetual recurrence, eternal return to childhood, the endless concourse of fresh days, nothing but uninhabited wealth and being free and needing to make it a world. Each longs to be one worker among many, a happy piece in a progress, longs for a mature continuity, a classic harmony of measured stages completed and preserved, dross purged, and the pure sums added, the clear results amounting to a city held in a single glance. In that splendid extent, each page trudges lost, and when it stumbles, startled, it comes on words of another there before it, breathing in, breathing out, O Elysium, and sees its hope is wrong, its glory dark, and so crosses itself out and starts again. There are many riches to engage with here and sort out, but we should start as usual with the title, The Book to Come. This is going to be a poem of prophecy, a poem of anticipation, of looking towards the advent of something that is not yet here. This is a quite familiar feature of poems in general, that in their unfolding they are reaching towards something that hasn't yet been spoken, in such a way that the consecutive unfolding of the words is seen as a movement towards that revelation, and if it is lucky, an embodiment of it as well. And we'll see that this is one of the implications of this poem as a whole, that is, it is speaking of the book to come, so that we can hear a kind of punning reference to Moritz's volume as a whole, The New Measures. To what extent is this poem announcing the arrival of the book that is now to come? This is the first poem in the book. But also, to what extent is it a dreaming towards a book that is not this book, but another book that the poem wishes for, looks towards, and anticipates? Shall we get the illusion of the title out of the way here? The Book to Come. Some readers will hear the title of a volume by the French novelist and critic Maurice Blanchot, who died only a few years ago, born in 1907, lived to a grand age. He wrote a book entitled Le Livre à Venir, literally the book to come, or, if you like, the book of the future book. The punning in Blanchot's title itself seems to speak of a book that is still to come, still to arrive, but also a book that is about the future. Le Livre à Venir, the future book. Of course, a book about the future can actually be in front of us and present. One of the chapter titles of Blanchot's volume is Où va la littérature? Where is literature going? And it includes as one of its subsections La disparition de la littérature, the disappearance of literature. This idea of a literature that is both moving forward and disappearing is going to visit us again about 3/4 of the way down through the poem. So we'll put it here and then lay it aside for now. One of the first things I guess we notice in reading through the poem is that it is less about the book as a whole than it is about each individual page that makes up that book, and how each page imagines, as it were, its place within that whole. So while we have the sense of a process unfolding in the direction of a thing not yet here, this process actually unfolds in relation to each page's individual self-erasing journey in the direction of that whole. So we have this sense of this is what each page will feel like in this book to come that is not yet here. But there's also the sense of these pages themselves trying to work towards or manifest that book. Can one write one's way towards the book to come when one's own pages are not a part of that book? A challenging and, for me, wonderfully melancholic inquiry that is implied in so many of Moritz's poems. The language of this poem is so much one of solitude, of setting out again, of new departures, a moving away from something that already is into an unknown solitude, a desire for the next thing, a desire for belonging, and a recognition of one's place in that continuing process of renewal. Am I a part of what I work towards, or is what I work towards inexorably removed from me, part of another book with other pages than mine? So the poem focuses on how each individual page feels, that is, the feelings inferred from the feeling of each page that it is singular and the most important. Surely we can hear in the title, The Book to Come, a quiet echo of the life to come. That is, we are all individuals in a whole that is larger than us. We struggle to try and understand our place in that whole. And so, yes, lying quietly behind the concerns of this poem is the larger metaphor of life itself as a kind of book. We can read this in two different contexts. Our individual lives are like a kind of book with individual chapters. The book has a beginning and a middle and an end. But then there is also the larger metaphor of the book of life in general, in relation to which our individual lives are but single pages. Okay, well, let's get into the details now. I see the poem breaking down into 4 intelligible sections, or movements, if you like, chapters even. The sections break down roughly as each page in the book is first, down to forgets the others ever were, and then it sets out at dawn in culpable but perfect innocence, down to and being free and needing to make it a world, and then another shift, each longs to be one worker among many, continuing down to mounting to a city held in a single glance, and then the concluding section in that splendid extent running to the end of the poem. The first and the fourth sections are going to be closely interwoven, and we'll see ways in which elements in the first section are picked up and echoed in the final section, in such a way that, yes, the poem itself is working towards something that it already anticipates or already represents. The first and last sections contain an allusion to a line from literature, and both, of course, invoke this idea of beginning again and leaving something behind. We'll see how this works. But the middle 2 sections are closely related as well. The second section offers us this theme of breaking away, departing from what has come before. And the third section reverses this movement in a sense as it comes to think of itself as part of a progress, a continuity, as it says, part of a series of stages. So a stepping away from and then a folding back into in these 2 middle sections that form a kind of dialectic that the outer 2 sections are going to frame. So back to the top. Certainly there's this implication that each page at the top, that is, as it begins to unfold, is carrying on from what is otherwise a fixed page in its entirety before it. We come to the first of the 2 parenthetical insertions that are actually lines from the past. Behold, I make all things new, is an allusion to the revelation of a recreative initiative in spirit itself, Revelations 21:5. But look how wonderfully it works here. It is one of the great tricks of echo and allusion that the original lines are both invoked as something past, something superseded by the present poem, but also something present in the present poem. So you can think of how the new poem presents past lines as past, but also as here and now effective in this new poem in which its authority is recreated, reauthorized, if you like. So the very gesture of allusion here makes the point that it embodies. That is, the passage is an example both of something that has already been decided, insofar as it is part of a past literature, while at the same time it is the very gesture of making that decided thing new by alluding to it here. The present page is a present unfolding, but it is also a fixed page to be superseded in itself. And of course, the implication for each of us as individuals is inescapable. The sense that we are the latest expression of a long, unfolding, evolutionary narrative, and yet also at the same time but one expression of a process that will unfold beyond us, and in relation to which we struggle to find our place. Where in these earlier lines we have a sense of innocence and freshness, a feeling of radical departure, the present section is dominated by feelings of desire and longing. Each longs to be and longs for a mature continuity. Where above we had the page stumbling on alone, here we have the page seeing itself as one worker among many, a happy piece in a progress. The solitudes of departure above weighed against the sense of participating in a whole, a unity that passes through it and to which it defers. So these middle two sections again picking up the tension that is evoked and embodied in the title of the poem and its subject matter of both anticipating a thing that is not yet here, moving towards that thing, and feeling that one is a part of that anticipated presence. This sense of the page participating insofar as it is part of a larger book in a kind of dialectic. And it's hard not to feel that Moritz is making explicit here the actual terms and conditions of dialectical thinking as characterized in the work of the German philosopher Hegel, and in particular his concept of Aufhebung, a wonderfully evocative and ambiguous term that means three things at once. It means to erase, to transcend, and to preserve. So a new element erases what comes before it, it transcends what comes before it, but it also preserves what comes before it. There is a kind of paradox at the heart of dialectical thinking. So look how we have it. The measured stages are completed and preserved. The dross is purged, and the pure sums are added, so that what is lacking is left behind or purged. Something is added to it, but there is also a sense of each of those leavings behind as being preserved as such in the unfolding whole. And of course, the book as an object can be seen as a quite unique embodiment of Hegel's concept, right? Because each page is left off, it is transcended, and yet at the same time preserved in the whole that is the actual book itself. The book is both an unfolding towards and a making present of all the stages that defer to that whole unfolded towards. So that spiraling up into the next better thing is an amounting, rising and amounting to a city held in a single glance. The city metaphor picking up the concept of the New Jerusalem, the idealized human community that is hinted at in the Revelations echo at the beginning of the poem, "Behold, I make all things new." Out of that, "Behold, I make all things new," we are moving upwards towards the city, the New Jerusalem, that the moving upwards itself seeks to manifest. And of course, the book can be taken in at a single glance, for there it is in its entirety. The book represents a kind of amounting towards that is expressed in each of its unfolding pages, and a totality that is already there in front of you. So how does the poem resolve itself into the inferences that it is unfolding towards? Those tensions become a splendid extent where each page is trudging lost, the trudging lost picking up on the stumbling on alone that we have earlier. So I guess the first thing we'd want to note is that in the poem unfolding we have moved from the top towards the bottom of the page. That is, what was begun at one point, what was a fresh beginning, is now resolving into a conclusion, a finish. This individual page itself must come to an end. In all poems, our reading from the top to the bottom of the page embodies a kind of descent motif. We set out again and again to rise above what has come before us, but our own rising above is at the same time a descent down into what we ourselves find it possible to say. And this is picked up in the final section in the idea of stumbling itself. We've had stumbling already. The poem in Culpable but Perfect Innocence is joying in the terror of stumbling on alone. And here, in that splendid extent, each page trudges lost, and when it stumbles, startled, it comes on words of another there before it. This term stumbling itself, wonderfully evocative. It can mean, of course, to fall, to trip over something, but also to make a slip in speech. I stumbled as I spoke, and also to come upon by chance, to stumble upon. As here, the poem does its next page. That is, it stumbles upon words that come before it, or that lie before it. How beautifully this punning works in this next phrase. Startled, it comes on words of another, there before it. These alluded to lines, we'll come to them in a moment, quite actually lie before, that is, lie in front of the words that move towards it. Startled, it comes on words of another, there before it. But those words alluded to, are also there before it. That is, they are from the past. They have been there before. And then the parenthetical breaking away into the alluded to lines, breathing in, breathing out, O Elysium, in exactly the same position as the alluded to lines at the top of the poem, also in parenthesis. Behold, I make all things new. The first gives us the notion of a radical renewal, the second of a kind of cycling, an unfolding process. I didn't get this myself. I needed some help. But the actual line, breathing in, breathing out, O Elysium, is a line from a poem by Czesław Miłosz entitled With Trumpets and Zithers. You can freeze this frame if you want to look at the first verse paragraph of the poem more closely. But if you take a look at it and the poem as a whole, which is included in Miłosz's new and collected poems, you'll pick up on this idea once more of a journeying, a moving towards. But perhaps most importantly, Miłosz's poem ends with this marvelous line, I thought that all I could do would be done better one day. And how closely, right, this is related to Moritz's own poem, this sense of a process that is moving towards an ideal place, an Elysium, both an Elysium as a sense of an afterworld, but also a place of promise and arrival of the ultimate accomplishing of one's ends, the city held in a single glance, as it were. But yes, in Miłosz, this sense of wanting to say the thing that will be better said by another that comes afterwards. I think we need to step aside and think again about the implications for a poetics of echo and allusion. For a poet to come on words of another there before it is to confront a literary tradition. So Moritz moves forward towards lines that precede it, right? And of course that's what echo and allusion can accomplish. You have this sense both of a literary past anticipating and preceding in authority any lines that might follow it. They were first, they were original, but also the sense of these echoed lines now participating in the unfolding towards that the present poem represents. The lines are recreated, the lines are made new, as we had above. But this sense, too, right, of what we want to say having already been said and having not yet been said. So you say the thing already said as a way of trying to move towards the thing yet to say. And so these tensions resolved into, and sees its hope is wrong, its glory dark, and so crosses itself out and starts again. The crossing itself out, picking up on the dialectic above of a thing being both transcended, preserved, and erased. And is there a sense in the idea of a page crossing itself out, the sense of the turning of a page? When you're reading a book, your eyes do actually cross away from the present page as it moves to the next one. Its crossing itself out is the advent and discovery of another page's words lying there before it. The crossing itself out, picking up on the crossing out that we had effectively in the opening lines, and happy forgets the others ever were, and then anticipates the crossings out that we get now at the end. This very forgetting, this very leaving behind now happening to the present page, the present life. This strange idea of seeing that its hope is wrong, the wrong sort of hope perhaps having to do with this feeling of making all things new, of a departure into something not yet said, that this page is going to be the one that finally arrives. That is the hope that in the descent of the page down to what it itself will have finally said turns out to be but one of many expressions of the same process. And the page in humility has to give itself to that end, and so crosses itself out. The starts again, picking up in exactly the same position at the top of the poem, the notion of re-beginning. Each re-begins, and now each starts again, so we come full circle in the poem. but this melancholic and hopeful end, alternative to the wrong sort of hope of arriving and being the new thing. At the poem's end, there is this sense of another departure, a new beginning. In our ends are our beginnings, in our beginnings are our ends. Of course, in this poem's beginning, there is an anticipation of how it's going to end. That setting out again is both a renunciation of oneself and an investment of one's self in the hope of the book yet to come. And we see how our own individual superannuation participates in a greater unfolding that is the hope, in whatever secular or spiritual terms you like to think of that. So, yes, Moritz is this wonderful poet of prophecy throughout so much of his work, writing in the prophetic tradition, where prophecy itself is not so much a magical prediction of what has not yet happened, but the sense that these things that are yet to be are strangely manifest in the present moment. The book to come is here in front of us, after all. It follows after this first poem that anticipates it, but its spirit is one of each individual contributions erasing itself, renouncing itself in relation to that whole. Maybe it's true that what lies at the heart of prophecy is a recognition of a lack and a promise that lies at its own heart, a prophecy that is certainly fulfilled so far as this volume is concerned in the book to come. And so there then our thanks to A.F. Moritz for his poem The Book to Come, included in his new volume entitled The New Measures, The House of Anansi Press, 2012.